"Remember how our roles reversed," said my former classmate, standing before me. Back in middle school, she was the picture of youth and health, but now her former self was nowhere to be seen. She smiled weakly, her figure emaciated. Why was she so kind to me? What happened to her that led to this state? I invited her to a cafe to find out what had happened to her since we graduated from middle school. What she shared was a past so heartrending that even as a listener, I found myself on the verge of tears. "My name is Jason, just a regular male student. I wish I could say that, but it's not that simple. My family is just my mom. We're a single-parent household. My dad didn't die. He left us for another woman. I barely remember his face, so it must have been a long time ago. Before I knew it, life without a dad became the norm. Since he left, my mom has been raising me on her own. She never complained and loved me more than anything, working every day. I wanted to repay her effort, so no matter how tough it got, I tried not to be a burden. But the harsh reality is that effort isn't always enough. If only it was just my dad who disappeared, but he took all our savings and bank bucks with him, probably to divert as much attention as possible to himself, likely for his mistress. Because of his selfish actions, we were really strapped for cash. Not just tight on money like other families, we lived in a dirt cheap apartment, usually having just one meal a day. It's not that we had nothing to eat, but we couldn't always have 3 full meals. This was when I was in middle school. My school didn't provide school meals. Lunch was always packed. But my mom worked from dawn till dusk and was too exhausted to even take a bath before falling asleep. There was no way she had time to make my lunch. Sure, she might have if I asked, but I couldn't bring myself to ask that of her. Working hard for my sake, but going without lunch during my growing years was hell. So I tried making lunch myself when she wasn't around. Minutes later, what sat in my lunchbox was as black as the darkest night. I thought it might suck me in if I touched it. Turns out I had 0 talent for cooking. My mom wasn't particularly fond of cooking, but could make decent meals. So I guess the one to blame is still my dad. I always brought a slice of bread with strawberry jam on it. Everyone else spread out lunches made by their parents or grandparents, chatting and enjoying their break. But I didn't belong there. Not because I was ostracized, but because their lunches were too dazzling. What everyone else had in their hands seemed unattainable for me. Watching them with envy, I felt incredibly small nibbling on bread. I couldn't stay in the classroom thinking, so I declined my friends' invitations and sought a place where I could be alone. My only companion was my bread. I had 2 options, the rooftop or behind the gym. Unfortunately, the rooftop was locked, so that was out of the question. It seems like hanging out on the rooftop during lunch is only a thing in TV drama series, so I decided to eat behind the gym. I could faintly hear the voices of students enjoying their break on the nearby playground, but no one ever came behind the gym. There I could savor my solitude, unseen by anyone. Until that day, I was late for lunch because of committee work. But my lunch was just a slice of bread, so it didn't take long to eat. I hurried to my usual spot behind the gym. There was someone already there. It was the first time I saw someone else here during lunch break, and it was a familiar female student. Her name was Sarah, a girl from my class. She was the daughter of the president of the Kensington Group. In other words, super rich, but she wasn't snobby or arrogant. She was just a normal, kind girl to everyone. We got close, just exchanged greetings. There was Sarah, squatting in front of a drain behind the gym, doing something. What is she doing here? I wondered, and moved to where I could see her hands. She was holding a lunchbox. She had it tilted open. It looked like it would fall, and just as I thought that, it happened. "What a waste," I blurted out without thinking. Sarah flinched at my voice. She turned quickly and hid her lunch behind her. She must have been surprised, probably didn't realize I was watching from behind. As she stumbled over her words, I immediately approached her. "I'm terribly sorry for startling you, but are you not going to eat that lunch?" She was the daughter of a company president, so I spoke to her in the most dignified language I knew. How I hoped, if you're not going to eat it. May I have it, please? I was famished from having gym class right before lunch. My stomach felt like it was stuck to my back. A slice of bread was too harsh for a growing middle school boy. Her lunch looked lavish, even from a distance, and the quantity seemed too much for a girl's lunch. If she was going to throw it away, I'd be grateful for even a half bite. Sarah was momentarily stunned by my eagerness. "Sure, you can have it." Maybe it was because of my refined language, but she agreed. "Really? May I truly have it?" I couldn't believe my ears and asked again. "Yeah, really," she said, and handed it to me. That's when I lost consciousness. When I came to, the lunchbox was empty, and the aroma of a tangy sauce lingered in my mouth. After finishing the meal, I thanked her. "You don't need to thank me. I didn't make it," Sarah said. "Did you forget your lunch today?" She peered into my face. No. Actually, I have bread, but that's all I have." Saying that, I took out clumsily sliced bread, just bread with strawberry jam. That's all. Her eyes widened with surprise as she asked, "That's not much for a boy, right? Are you on a diet?" Would someone on a diet devour someone else's lunch like a beast? I had never told anyone before, but I explained how my father disappeared and how my mother, working tirelessly, didn't have time to make lunch. Sarah listened silently until the end, then she spoke. "But, Chasen, you're amazing, making your lunch yourself. It even looks tasty," she complimented me. It might have been the first time someone other than my mother praised me, and I felt a sense of pride. As a thank you for sharing my story, Sarah began to talk about her own family. In summary, her stepmother wasn't her biological mother. Her real mother had passed away, and her current mother was her father's second wife. The stepmother was nice to Sarah in front of her father, but she was worse when he wasn't around. Even the lunchbox was part of that harassment. Despite knowing Sarah's small appetite, she packed it with too much food, including things Sarah disliked. If Sarah left anything, her stepmother would say, "How can you leave it when I work so hard to make this?" and would become hysterical. That's why she was trying to throw away the contents. I see. No wonder the quantity was so much. To my starving self, it was a feast, but for her, it was an overwhelming amount. "So, you haven't eaten lunch yet today?" She nodded silently to my question, embarrassed. I offered her my bread. "Here, please have it." It's wrapped in plastic, so I didn't touch it directly. She took the bread from my hand and smiled. "Thank you," she said, enjoying the bread. After that day, we started exchanging lunches. Our meeting place was behind the gym. We shared stories and complaints while eating. Though we were in the same classroom, we hadn't talked much before, but we found we had a lot in common. After eating, I'd take a short nap while Sarah drew in her sketchbook. She was in the art club and amazingly good at drawing. The sound of her pencil on the paper was soothing, and I enjoyed those moments. Life became smoother for me from there. I was able to go to a nearby public high school with decent academic standing, and my mom cried tears of joy when I got accepted. Sarah ended up attending a boarding school for young ladies, located a bit far from where I was. She wanted to get away from her mother as soon as possible, and I remember her being incredibly excited the day she got accepted. Her drawings are more aggressive than usual. Then came our last lunch together. The thought of not being able to exchange lunches with her anymore felt a bit sad. On her last day, Sarah was still drawing in her sketchbook. Looking at her profile, I considered confessing my fleeting feelings, but wanting to keep this youthful memory to myself, I suppressed my tender emotions and etched her image into my mind. It wasn't long after I started high school my mother remarried. My stepfather, in his first marriage, had been caring for his disabled parents and hadn't had the chance to meet someone until now. He wasn't exactly handsome, but he was sincere and kind, a good match for my mother. With a stable income from his job, my mother quit her exhausting work and found a full-time job with less burden. My stepfather maintained a comfortable distance with me, so we quickly developed a relationship where I could call him Dad. Thanks to his support, I smoothly progressed in my studies and got into a renowned university. I landed a job at a major corporation, leading a life far richer than anything I could have imagined as a child. A few years into my job, I was leading busy yet fulfilling days, but due to a transfer within the company, I had to move. While I was excited about starting a new life in a place somewhat distant from my parents' home, I wasn't without anxiety about living in an unfamiliar area. Once I had settled into my new home, I went out to get groceries. There was a charming small shopping district nearby where I usually did my shopping. Even after a few years of working, cooking remained a challenge for me. I had practiced enough to make spaghetti, but my specialty was still macaroni and cheese. My mother had tried to teach me, but I was utterly hopeless. It's okay not to force yourself to practice. There are plenty of fast food restaurants, thus I was consoled. At the end of the shopping street, I discovered a small hamburger shop. My mother had said fast food restaurant meals were fine, but I never really liked them. I was afraid that relying solely on fast food restaurant meals at my age might be bad for my health. This small hamburger shop, though modest, was clean and had delicious-looking hamburgers on display. They seemed homemade. Yes, homemade meals are the best. Perhaps because I hadn't had much experience with homemade meals in the past, I quickly developed a fondness for those made by human hands rather than those mass-produced in factories. The fact that the shop was run by an elderly lady was a bonus point. The atmosphere of an established store made the hamburgers look even more appetizing. Looking at the hamburgers on display, I saw a variety of options. There were ham hamburgers, meat and vegetable hamburgers, bacon hamburgers, and more. All looked delicious and were priced affordably. Even a student could afford to buy two. I picked up a hamburger. That's when I felt a sense of déjà vu. Not with the hamburgers, but with a picture on the wrapping paper. A subtle landscape painted casually on the wrapper. The wrapping paper was casually adorned with a delicate landscape painting. It was beautiful. It felt familiar, as if I had seen it somewhere before, but perhaps I was mistaken. I took the daily special hamburgers to the register. "Did you make these?" In response to my question, the elderly lady replied, No. I can't stand for long because of my bad legs, so I just mind the shop. But these are made by a beautiful lady, so they are really delicious." With a smile, she packed the hamburgers into a bag for me. Back home, the lunch tasted somehow nostalgic, like something I had eaten before. Since then, I became a regular at that small hamburger shop in the shopping district. Sometimes there was someone other than the elderly lady at the counter, apparently her husband. I wondered, why has my wife dressed up lately? "It's because of you, young man. he'd say with a hearty laugh while selling the hamburgers. Besides these two, I never saw anyone else at the hamburger shop. I wondered where the beautiful lady the elderly lady mentioned was. One day, as usual, I went to the hamburger shop, only to find a blind man shouting in front of the shop, "Refund my money. The lunch was terrible." The man was shouting furiously. The person apologizing to the man was neither the usual elderly lady nor her husband. It was a slender woman I had never seen before. Behind her, the husband was saying, "Bad? Maybe you have something wrong with your taste buds, not our lunch." He was arguing back just as fiercely. "Quiet down, will you?" the elderly lady scolded her husband. Indeed, it seemed like the husband's competitive nature was escalating the situation. I pulled out my cell phone and began speaking loudly. "Yes, that's right." At the exit of the shopping district, "There's a man causing a big scene here." That's what I said. Of course, I wasn't really connected to anyone hearing my voice. The blind man quickly left the front of the hamburger shop. "Thank you, dear." This foolish husband of mine just had to say something, causing trouble for poor Sarah. The elderly lady nudged her husband. "It's the fault of that young punk for criticizing Sarah's cooking," he grumbled, heading back inside. I was honestly stunned. The fact that both of them referred to this slim woman as Sarah shook me. Sarah, that was the name of a girl from high school I was close to. The woman who had just been shouted at turned to me, surprised, and then said with a hint of sadness, "Jason, is that you?" She asked hesitantly, almost as if praying. Her expression seemed to convey a wish that I wasn't who she thought I was. "Yeah," I could only nod in response. "Do you remember me? I'm sorry for looking like this. It's like our roles have reversed," she smiled weakly. Seeing her smile, the image of Sarah from our school days overlapped. Though much thinner now, her face still bore traces of the old Sarah. "I remember you, but why are you here?" "This is quite far from our hometown," Sarah said. "It would be a long story. Today's been a lot, so I'm closing the shop early. You can go home now, Sarah," the elderly lady, having watched us, told her while waving her hand. She handed me a few hamburgers. They were oddly cold. After that, Sarah and I sat down at a nearby cafe to talk. What she shared was heartbreakingly unbelievable. Right after she started high school, her stepmother and father had a son. With the birth of a son, the presidency of the Kensington Group naturally shifted to Sarah's younger brother. As a result, Sarah's position in the Kensington family became considerably diminished, with some even deeming her as no longer useful. I was furious, but the story continued. After graduating high school, Sarah was forced into arranged marriages to strengthen the family's business. Her chosen spouse was a man 10 years her senior, the son of a business associate. Although he wasn't her type, she married him, thinking it was for the family's sake. However, her husband neglected her, spending every night out with his mistress. "Don't think our son is at fault for partying. You're the problem for failing to keep his heart." Sarah lived in a daily cycle of such demeaning comments. Finally, Sarah's husband, after having a child with his mistress, forced Sarah out of their home. Trying to return to her parents' home, Sarah found they wouldn't accept her back. Betrayed by her husband and abandoned by her family, she was left utterly depleted, both physically and emotionally. It was the couple who ran the hamburger shop who took her in. They gave me a place to stay when I had nowhere else to go, and they even let me work here. "They are really kind people," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. Back then, she was an enviable, sparkling figure admired by everyone. Sarah was loved by all, treating everyone equally regardless of gender. I was appalled to learn that such a person had her educational opportunities taken away due to outdated values and had her life crushed by her husband and family. I'm really left with nothing. I feel completely empty, she said. I wanted to do something for her. After all, I still hadn't repaid the kindness I received from Sarah behind the gymnasium. Hey, Sarah, I've got something I want to discuss with you. I had a proposal for her. The major company I joined was a design firm founded by my stepfather. I was in charge of the media content department there. True, my joining the company was initially through my stepfather's connections. However, I found my fit in the design industry and consistently delivered results, so no one ever mentioned my connections anymore. I had even made some good friends there. Among them, I was particularly close with Kevin. Kevin was particularly good at delegating work and had a knack for knowing when to ease off. We were currently looking for an illustrator who could create background images for a project. Kevin usually excels in finding talented illustrators, but this time we were having trouble. We have illustrators, but finding one with a soft touch for background images, that's the issue. Can't you do something about it? I asked Kevin. Not just for any background artist, but for a creator with a gentle, warm touch. No compromises. After a serious sigh, he responded. All right, I'll bring you an amazing illustrator, one that'll impress even you. Too bad, Kevin. This time, I found an excellent illustrator before you did. Yes, my proposal to Sarah was for her to work as an illustrator with us. Sure enough, she was the one who had drawn the pictures on the hamburgers wrappers. Her illustrations were impressive enough to be an immediate asset to our company. How about working as an illustrator from home? Sarah quickly shook her head. My drawings are nothing special, just a hobby. I took out several of the hamburger wrappers I had saved every time I bought hamburgers. I carefully folded and preserved its wrapper. These are your drawings, right? I don't think the elderly couple could have drawn these. It's a waste to have such talent and not use it. The prints are just homemade, right? We'd really like you to join us, I begged her. I learned that she could also draw on a tablet. That made her even more desirable for our company. Still, she was hesitant. How about trying it out? If you don't like it, you can quit any time. We'll definitely pay you. She nodded in agreement. I could almost picture Kevin's frustrated face from afar. The next day, I brought Kevin to the hamburger shop. I can't stand that you found an illustrator before me. It's truly regrettable, he declared, eager to see that talented artist for himself. Standing in front of the hamburger shop, the elderly lady greeted us. Oh, you brought a friend today, she said, handing me several pieces of paper. She got really enthusiastic, it seems, she added. The paper she handed me had wrappers with softly rendered warm illustrations. As expected, they were excellent. Kevin peered over. What is this? He exclaimed, practically flipping over. Well, these are beautiful hand-drawn relish. Humans' evolution is amazing, he blurted out. At breakneck speed, this delicate touch, just what Jason was looking for. And there he goes, tripping over his words, leaving a flustered Kevin behind. I looked toward the back of the shop and saw Sarah peeking out, trying to hide. I begged her. I was eager to make a formal request right away. Sarah rushed out from the back. I'll take the job. Just please stop begging me like that, she said playfully, punching me. I was relieved that Sarah's involvement meant the project might succeed and that our connection wouldn't fade away. About a year into Sarah's contract, she quickly became a popular creator. How did you find her? You must have used up all your luck for the rest of your life, Kevin would say enviously, almost every day. But now I even found his jealousy comforting. I was proud of having discovered Sarah's talent as a creator. While continuing her part-time job at the hamburger shop, she was actively improving her skills and even planning her own exhibition. Apparently, Sarah's ex-husband started trying to get in touch with her, despite her smoothly sailing life. Ironically, it turned out the child he had with his mistress wasn't his. Serves him right after mistreating Sarah and driving her away. He was reportedly cut off from transactions with the Kensington Group. This was due to Sarah's father being furious over the excessively cold treatment she received. Consequently, he lost credibility in his industry, and his business rapidly deteriorated. The ex-husband, now thinking that reconciling with Sarah might mend ties with the Kensington family, had recently been stalking her. When Sarah consulted me about her ex, I switched to remote work. Additionally, I started working from a corner of the hamburger shop. As expected, her ex-husband showed up there. During a meeting, I heard arguing downstairs. "Come back. I'll give you a better life than this lousy hamburger shop." That must be the ex-husband's vile voice. "Stop it. Let go." Sarah's voice reached the second floor. I expected the hamburger shop's husband to come yelling any moment, but his voice never came, nor did the elderly lady's. After a moment of thought, I remembered, that's right, both the elderly couple were at the hospital today, leaving Sarah alone in the shop. I hurried downstairs. A shabby-looking man was grabbing Sarah's arm, trying to drag her away. I immediately intervened. "Who the hell are you?" "Outsider, Shinbutun." "Outsider, that's rude," I said, handing him my business card. "I'm Jason, Sarah's fiancé." I introduced myself. Seeing my business card, her ex-husband's face turned pale. In the past few years, I had been recognized for my achievements and had become the executive vice president of the company. Moreover, my stepfather's company had grown significantly, now even appearing in TV commercials. "I've consulted our company's legal advisor about you. If you turn around now and never show up in front of us again, we can let this stalking incident slide." After I gently explained, the ex-husband grumbled and then ran off. Sarah was initially surprised to learn that her father had influenced her ex-husband's downfall in the industry. She had thought it was her father who hadn't allowed her to return home. However, due to the recent stalking incident by her ex-husband, Sarah had an opportunity to talk with her family. There, she learned that it was her stepmother who had refused to let her return home. The stepmother had made this decision on her own and reported it to Sarah's father in a way that suited her. I apologized to Sarah for pretending to be her fiancé to get rid of her ex-husband. It actually helped. "I knew you were just trying to defuse the situation," she said, smiling brightly like she used to in our student days. Seeing that smile, I decided and took Sarah's hand. "I want to be your fiancé for real. I've liked you since middle school. I want to be with you with marriage in mind," I confessed right in front of the hamburger shop. Our wedding day was blessed with clear skies. The only guests were my parents and Sarah's father. Although it was a small ceremony attended only by the elderly couple who run the hamburger shop, it was a lovely occasion filled with smiles throughout. During the ceremony, Sarah and her father had a moment to talk alone, seemingly resolving their past conflicts. Her father was unaware of the stepmother's cold treatment towards Sarah. Upon learning the truth, he immediately made a phone call. "I'm sorry for all the hardship you've endured for so long. I can't divorce her, but I will leave that house and live separately. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely." Saying this, Sarah's father apologized to her, tears welling up in his eyes. Sarah was surprised to see her father's tears. For the first time, men cry too, you know. Praised him for realizing his mistake, Sarah. the hamburger shop owner said, concluding the ceremony. My mother and stepfather continue to have a great relationship. I want to build a family using these two as a role model. Living happily ever after with Sarah is my ideal. To live happily together, creating our own intimate memories. What a bright and beautiful future it seems. Maybe when we're older, we can run a hamburger shop like that elderly couple. I'll have Sarah draw pictures on the wrappers. I'm sure it will be popular. I smiled, looking at my wife in her simple yet elegantly lined wedding dress. Who would have thought a small hamburger shop in a shopping street would bring such a profound connection with Sarah? Suddenly, my wife's profile overlapped with the one I used to secretly admire in middle school. When I mentioned this to her, she said, "Actually, back then, I secretly drew you," as she smiled shyly. I felt an overwhelming love for her and wished for our happiness to last forever.